Have you ever failed to call back a buyer's agent about one of your listings because you didn't have time to answer their questions? Do you ever become aggravated when a buyer grills you about the mortgage and other property details? As a seller's agent, it's essential for you to know every detail about each one of your listings. To help guide you on the information, what is important to know and what's important not to know, check out these 10 questions that every agent should ask after taking a new listing. This is Nathan Clark with Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty here in Rhode Island. In this video, I'll cover 10 questions that every seller's agent should ask about their listings. And don't forget, if you're a real estate agent and would like to make $100,000 of net income guaranteed, or I'll pay you the difference, check us out at sellmorehomesnow.info. And don't forget to like and subscribe below. Now, let's get started. Is there still time to put an offer? If there's not a signed contract to the property and your state allows you to negotiate more than one offer at a time, then the only correct answer is yes. Here in Rhode Island, until the buyer and seller both have a copy of a signed, sealed, and delivered agreement, then an offer comes in, your job as a listing agent is to present the offer. How much will the seller take? That's a very common question you still get out there. The correct answer is, I don't know. The only way to find out is a submitted offer. Another common question we get out there is, how many mortgages are there on the property? Very few agents ask this question because mortgage-related issues are normally handled by escrow or title once the property is put under contract. But if you don't know the number and the amount of the mortgage of the property, it can complicate the closing process. And worse, sometimes you go to the closing and the closing is not going to happen because you have maybe the wrong name on the title. Maybe you signed a listing agreement that doesn't even affect the current owner of the property because you signed with somebody that doesn't own the property. For example, in the event the seller happens to be part of a 5% to 10% of home buyers who are behind in their mortgage payments and owe more than what the property is worth, you only take really 5 minutes to check that data out by looking at the available mortgage data, but it would save you a long time of selling the property and going all the way to closing to find out they don't have $50,000 to bring to the closing. Are there any liens or judgments on the property? Sellers may be embarrassed to admit they haven't paid their homeowner's dues, or there's an IRS tax lien. You've seen this dozens, if not hundreds of times out there. This is the reason you should always ask this question and then double check what is currently recorded against the property anyways. Ideally, you should do this before the listing goes live in the MLS. It's much better to work this out prior to taking a listing than have to deal with it once the property is under contract. Are there any municipal or city fines on the property? This is a very common thing, especially you go to certain cities. If a property is vacant and the seller is having financial difficulties, or if the property is bank owned, the seller may have additional fines that will have to be paid before the transaction can close. Complicating matters even further, if you're the listing agent becomes aware of these fines, you're obligated to disclose this to potential buyers. There are sites online where you can check out for this information and for liens. Another good question you want to know is, how much can the buyer expect to pay in property taxes? A lot of these AVMs and MLS displays the current property taxes, but depending on your state and town or city, that can increase dramatically once the property closes. If it's a home shelter, or if they have certain exemptions, that would show up maybe on the tax roll, but their new buyer doesn't qualify for that. So if you can't answer the question for your area, investigate what exactly are the requirements so they can get the homestead exemption or a veteran exemption, very common ones out there, and make sure we're putting the right information up there in MLS. This will really help out the transaction because we've seen transactions die for the wrong information's out there, and it only comes out right before the closing, and the buyer doesn't qualify for the property now because the taxes are too high. Another common question is, does the homeowner association have any pending dues increases or special assessments or pending litigation? Extremely common for an owner who hasn't kept up with the HOA dues to be unaware of whether there are any special assessment or dues increases coming up. If the property is being transferred to the buyer, then they may be stuck paying the additional fees. Moreover, it's substantially dues. If the dues are substantial, it could impact the buyer's ability to qualify for their loan. Or if there's pending litigation on a condo association, a lot of banks will not allow the financing to go through, especially what's happened down in Florida with the recent collapse of a condo down there. Looking at any pending litigation is something that a lot of banks are looking at right now. Were permits pulled for all the improvements? When you take a listing and the seller says that they did the work themselves, or they had work done, even if they said it was done by professionals, Was the required permits pulled? Here in Rhode Island, pretty much going to pull a permit for anything. And if one of the things was required that the seller didn't have done yet, it's probably going to come up during the appraisal, and it's going to create an issue that we've seen people have to take out entire kitchens because things weren't done correctly and they had to be inspected. Whenever you take a listing, don't assume the buyer will know who to contact for utilities. Ask for copies of the seller's most recent utility bills to determine the providers for cable, internet, electricity, gas, trash, everything, water, and communicate them to them. So are you communicating offers to the seller in a timely manner? This is probably the most frustrating issue for competent agents and serious buyers. For whatever the reason is, some listing agents do not submit the offers to the sellers, or worse yet, they don't even call back the buyer's agent who took the time to write an offer. If you're not presenting offers in a timely manner that doesn't conform to your local real estate law, you need to start doing so now. Failure to do so can result in litigation, even possibly cause you to lose your license. So, if you can't answer these basic questions for any of your listings, it's time to start figuring out the answers now. The market, the day and age where you just put a sign in the front lawn and get 50 offers is fastly ending out there. And it's quickly coming to an end. That's not going to be here forever. The best way to make sure you provide your sellers and prospective buyers with the most professional representation possible is to make sure you're on top of your game. If you'd like more tips on working as a listing agent or want information on joining our team and becoming a listing agent with other professionals here in Rhode Island, feel free to give me a call at 401-288-3557 or visit sellmorehomesnow.info. I'm Nathan Clark, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Thanks for watching.